to PopCultX, or welcome back to PopCultX if you've been here before. My name is Danny, and Gabe can't be here today, unfortunately, but we are thrilled to be joined by John Avina, who's a comic book publisher, comic book writer, and a really cool dude, and he's taken some time to be our guest host today. So welcome, John. Welcome back to PopCultX.
Thank you guys for having me back.
Yeah, it's really cool. Last time you were here, we talked a lot about your comic books, which we'll get into. But first, I want to get your thoughts and maybe some of what you're watching right now or consuming in the pop culture arena.
Yeah, right now I'm kind of binging a bunch of like the Godzilla movies.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's been a while since I watched them all. So now it's like that's kind of my thing. And then X-Men 97.
Okay. Very cool.
I saw the Fallout like first episode.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I got to that. So that was awesome. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Now for Godzilla movies, are you going back to the old school ones, from Japan and whatnot?
Yeah, so I have the like Criterion box set. It's like that big book. Yeah, so I have that. So I've been like going disc by disc. And my son's he likes monsters. He likes dinosaurs and all that stuff. And he's only 3, but it's fun because now me and him get to watch all these things together. And
nice.
Like we watched Pacific Rim the other day.
Okay.
And he lost his mind. He thought because he loves robots and stuff. So he was like, oh my God. So it's been fun to like get to watch them with him because we're basically going to work our way to the new Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping it comes out soon on like disc, but yeah, that's the plan.
That's cool. That's really cool to be able to share that with your son. That's really neat. Are you gonna explain how like they transition him from a monster to like a lizard in some of the movies and whatnot?
Yeah, and he's definitely like you see his power progress as it goes because he's just kind of stompy in one, and then the other one he's like blowing stuff up. We sometimes jump out of order if he seems bored. So we did like this Godzilla like Space Wars thing.
Okay.
So we did like those, and you could see he was kind of confused, like how is this guy getting around? I was like, don't worry about it. I was like, they don't focus too much on that. It's more about seeing him fight. So
what about when you get to like Mecha Godzilla or whatnot? That should be fun.
He's gonna be very excited because he loves robots, so that's gonna be his jam for sure.
That's really cool. I mean, I remember watching some of those Godzilla, versus like Mothra and all the other type of creatures that he fights against or whatnot. And then you jump to like the 1996 version with Matthew Broderick, where now it's like just a regular lizard that's just grown to ginormous sizes. And then of course the newer versions, and the King of Monsters type thing, which is really cool. I enjoy the newer versions as well.
Yeah.
And the whole fight with Kong and whatnot. So I haven't seen the Godzilla -1, I think it's called.
That's the one that I'm hoping comes out soon because I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, but I really I want to see it. So I'm hoping like it comes out so I don't have to like pirate it. I'm gonna buy it either way. Like I'm gonna buy it, but I just want it now. So
yeah.
Yeah, I'm putting as many movies between me and that to give it time.
Yeah, that's the one I want to see as well. I'm really looking forward to it. I keep checking like on Amazon Prime. Is it on there? I'll pay for it if I have to. It's fine. Nope, hasn't been there yet. So hopefully soon we'll get to watch it. Maybe we'll come back together and talk about it later on once it comes out.
That would be cool.
Because I missed it in the theater, but that's okay. Speaking of Amazon Prime, I did catch a movie on there. A new movie that was released on April 4th that it's like a 95% real life event movie about a gentleman named Rudy Mancuso. It's called Musica. I'm not sure if you've heard of that one or not.
No, I don't think I've heard of that one.
It's a really cool, like I said, it's based on a true story. It even says that on the beginning. It's based on a true story, unfortunately. So it follows Rudy, who's a creative person who experiences synesthesia, I think that's how you say it. A condition where like everyday sound translates into musical rhythms in his head. So it's an autobiographical tale about his journey through in new work and how he deals with like he has this idea for a puppet show that he does in the subway that he wants to move up to bigger things through the help of the people in his life. So he's a Brazilian American, and it really follows his family and his culture. He even cast his mom, his real life mom, to play his mom in the movie.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so that's really cool. So when I was watching it, I hit pause on it real quick, and it said Rudy Mancuso, and then next to it, it said Maria Mancuso. I was like, oh, hey, wait, that's his real mom. That's really cool when you see stuff like that.
Yeah. Is that the movie with Cami Mendez, I think, right?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, I did hear of that one. Yeah, I
Yeah,
wanted to see it. My wife was talking about it, so very
yeah, it's
cool.
really cool. It's really well done. I enjoyed the music part of it because when I was watching, I was like, hey, I might have a slight portion of that because every time I hear things in out in the real world and they just start creating like a rhythm in my head. So like people sweeping, people, typing or anything, it just starts creating a beat and it really
Yeah,
showcases that in a fantastical way. So I recommend it, highly recommend it.
that's cool.
Yeah, it's one of those movies where it's like I didn't know what to expect going into it because I had only just seen the preview or not even the preview, just the name of it as I was scrolling by on Prime, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." So I'll watch it, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah, no, I wanted to see it. I heard good things about it. That Cami Mendes person did like a interview talking about it, and
Oh, okay,
okay, that's cool.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
recommend it definitely, especially with the puppet in there named Diego. He's hilarious.
yeah. I just saw the movie, The Gentleman, the Guy Ritchie one.
Oh yeah, yeah. They made a
That was
series out of
really
that
good.
too.
Oh yeah, I got to see that. So I heard about the series, so I was like, well, I'm gonna watch the movie,
Hmm.
and I was like, this is like right up my alley because it's about like a guy and he's writing it as like a screenplay or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, they got me. Yeah,
It's really cool when they take films, and I was thinking about this the other day. When they take a film and then they turn it in, adapt it into a series, because they it gets allows them to explore more of that universe that film
yeah.
is in. So I was thinking, okay, what's another series inspired by a film that would be great? And came up with the movie Inception.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Imagine the stories you can tell from that movie, how the whole dream walking started, how
Yeah,
just the plethora of stories that, and it's all dreams, so it can get as elaborate as you want, right?
yeah,
So
that
it's
would be cool. That'd be a good one.
any films at the top of your head that would make a great series?
That's what I was trying to. I think like Seven would be cool, where it's like a different serial killer of like the season or whatever.
Okay,
But it
okay.
would have to have like the same kind of like tone because like we kind of got that with like True Detective a little bit, and
Hmm.
I like the newer season of it, but like something like that where it's like the same two detectives and we just kind of follow them through. I think that would
Okay.
be cool.
And put some like paranormal stuff in there and call it like X Files or something.
Yeah,
Why not? Speaking of X, and you mentioned this as well, X-Men 97. Now,
yeah,
that is a great show. I've been watching it as well. And we talked about it in our last episode as well. But the one thing I wanted to touch on really for us is that's been being released weekly, which
yeah,
is a decision made, I guess, by the Disney brass. And I'm fine with that because I think it allows for the buildup between episodes for people
yeah,
like us to come and talk about it and get excited for the next episode versus Fallout Prime on Prime, which I think released the whole season one for people to go binge watch, which is also a decision they made, and people talk about it, and then they stop talking about it once they finish it. So
yeah.
I know I have my preference as to which model I like. Do you have a preference to which model of viewing you prefer?
So I don't mind either one, but like for Fallout, I think it would be better to have each episode come out a week
Mhm.
because then we have more time with it. So that way we're not like consuming it all at once and being like, why did they change it? We have more time to let changes kind of settle in.
Yeah.
But I think for like X-Men, give me all of it at once because it's like a cartoon. So I can like get through it in a afternoon because
Okay, yeah.
yeah, because it's not going to be as like I'm not going to be as hard on it because it's the animated series. They're redoing it. I think I would have enjoyed it more going through it because like the Jubilee episode, it was a great episode, but like coming off the back of like those first couple of episodes,
Hmm.
I was like, okay, like this is like not a filler episode, but it's just a softer episode. And
Right,
then you get
right.
like the last episode where I'm like, ah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
I get what like either way I'm tuning in. So it doesn't bother me as much, but I think like for Mandalorian, I kind of want all of it. Like just give it to me
Okay.
at this point. But I think for like a show's first season, if it hasn't been around, the weekly episodes is great because like The Last of Us will bring me back every week
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
keep watching it, especially if it's something like that kind of cinematic. Like I don't mind waiting because
Mhm.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's like Mandalorian, where it's pretty much just a live action cartoon, like I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay, but I want all of it. Like just give it to me because I don't want to wait because every episode's gonna be like they're stuck somewhere. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Like just release it.
The idea of a cliffhanger is like, okay, in some shows it's fine, but in others not so much.
And it's
Yeah.
funny because like since I write comics, I have to kind of give that little cliffhanger ending to bring people
Hmm.
back. And I'm like, oh, is this what I'm doing?
See, there you go.
Yeah.
Now, have you ever played any of the Fallout games?
Yeah. I played a bunch of I know right now they're on like a Steam sale, so I'm really tempted to like
Ooh,
to
okay.
get them back and
Yeah.
just kind of run through them because it's been a hot minute.
Hmm.
But Magic the Gathering came out with Fallout cards to
Oh,
play
nice.
in game. Yeah.
Okay.
So I got reintroduced into it because of that.
Hmm.
And that was like, all right, maybe if the show's good, I'll want to replay it. And now I'm like, all right, I'll play it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really good. I've enjoyed the show. I've watched I think 3 episodes so far,
Yeah.
and it's just not even so much. I guess people are complaining about the retconning of like New Vegas and stuff like that, and I
Yeah.
don't even care about all that. It's just seeing the Pit Boy, seeing the device on the arm, and see just the Vault Dwellers, and just seeing it in live action. To me, it's just been
Yeah.
so thrilling, and so hey, I recognize that. I recognize that. Oh, Nuka Cola and all this other stuff, and I just think it's such a fan's dream to see that come to life.
Yeah.
That why would you even worry about if they change something?
Yeah. I remember when the Nuka Cola, when Jones Soda released the original bottles of the Nuka Cola at
Hmm.
stores. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I
There
think
was
so.
a
Yeah.
guy at my Target that was getting like yelled at by employees because he kept trying to buy, like, they have like a one per customer thing or whatever.
Okay.
And he would just buy it, go to his car, and come back in like they wouldn't recognize him. And I was like, you just need the one, like it's just Jones Soda, dude. Like, relax, like, you can refill it. It's fine. But
Right.
yeah,
It's collector's items, I guess, right?
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, I even want to go back and play Fallout 76 just to see how many more people are in there playing now, because that was like
Yeah.
their first multiplayer version of Fallout, and I really enjoyed that one of it. So it's like, okay, maybe I'll stop playing Helldivers 2 for a while and go play Fallout 76.
Yeah.
It's
It's nice to take a break once in a while and jump like games.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's been really fun. But I'm glad they made the series. I was so excited when they first announced it. And then to see it, the whole episodes and at least a few of them, because I do enjoy the weekly. So I think I'm taking my time with it because I
Okay.
do enjoy the weekly release schedules. Mainly because it allows me to think about the episodes, and get excited for the next one to come, like they did with The Last of Us. You're correct.
Yeah.
That was just brilliantly done, and I'm looking forward to season 2 of that as well.
Yeah. I'm like, I kind of want that already. So I'm like, let's go, people.
Okay, so I guess you're saying that your final decision is you can binge watch some, but you prefer the
Yeah.
weekly episodic on others.
Correct. Yeah.
No problem.
Like Fargo. Like Fargo being weekly, totally fine. But
Yeah.
like X-Men and stuff, I'm like, just give it to me. Like, yeah.
That's what I'm doing. Like I will say I've been watching Resident Alien. So I can't say I don't like to binge watch, but I
Yeah.
prefer the episodic. Yeah.
Yeah, like if I have a weekend off, I'm just kind of like, oh, I have to wait.
Right. Well, speaking of weekends off, I'm sure those come few and far in between for you because you you have your day job, but you also
Yeah.
are a comic book publisher and a comic book writer. Um, so I'm sure that takes up a lot of your time as well.
Yeah.
So for those of our audience who might have missed our previous episode where we spoke with you, can you just share a little bit about with us again what initially drew you to the world of indie comics and maybe what was the first comic book project you ever worked on?
Yeah. So I loved comics. I like grew up on comics. My first one was Bartman from The Simpsons.
Nice.
Yeah. So that kind of got me hooked into it. And then I really got into comics because mom worked next to a bank and they were doing that Death of Batman storyline, like Batman RIP.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, I didn't know they could like just kill Batman. So I bought it to read it. And not having known like that was like a trope of like killing heroes and bringing them back. So I got into it on Red Robin because I was like, oh, like Tim Drake's like a new like he went Nightwing on us.
Okay.
So I read all of it. Like from then on, I was like buying every comic I can get my hands on. And then around the pandemic, we're gonna have my son. So I was like, I need to get back into doing something creative because I was a wedding photographer at the time, and that just stopped because all the
Mhm.
weddings pretty
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
went on hold. So I needed to fill that creative void. And I started writing comics because Scott Snyder, who did like Batman and stuff, was teaching a class on it.
Oh,
So
nice.
I adapted a bunch of scripts that I had written as screenplays into comic books. And the first big one I did was Lockjaw and Pistolero, which is about a mariachi singer that fights monsters with the silver string guitar.
That's
So
awesome.
I did that one, and then from there, I kept going. Like I didn't know how to stop, so it just like snowballed, and now I have like 22 books out.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's awesome. That really is
yeah,
cool.
yeah. And we just sold the rights to Lucha Forever and La Llorona to a company. So I actually sold my titles to another company. I'm still
Oh,
the writer on them,
okay.
but now another company is printing them. They own the media rights. So if it gets made into like a movie and stuff, we'll like split that. But it's really cool because they're like a very awesome company that it really care about indie comics. They're called
Hmm.
Comicer. And like from the moment I met this guy, he was like super interested in like my version of storytelling. And now those books live with him. So issue twos of those will be done soon. And then we're going right into issue three, which is great.
That's kind of cool. I mean, it's like your baby, and then you have watching it grow up in a way, right?
Yeah.
And you can take pride in the fact that you know that that's something you created, and now it's gonna hopefully with this new power behind it get even larger than maybe you might have imagined it.
Yeah, because he does a lot more conventions than I do. Like he has like the weekends to do those. So he's always traveling, going to shows. So it'll be nice to see my books out there in other people's hands.
That's
And
cool.
it's not like I know I sold it to them. Like they found it organically and they
Yeah,
still were able to get it. So
that's cool. Well,
yeah.
congratulations on that. That's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
Um, you mentioned something about creative. So I want to speak a little bit about that. When you're creating stories, do you have like a main source of inspiration for your storytelling? Are they like from other comic books, maybe movies, or something really significant that might have influenced your style or storytelling?
Definitely like like Guillermo del Toro stuff was
Oh,
like a
nice.
big inspiration. Like that helped me find style like that. Hellboy, whenever I start writing it, they usually fall in like a spectrum of like that kind of realm of like
Okay.
Guillermo del Toro and his ability to tell stories about families, but
Yeah.
in like his unique way. Because a lot of what I write is personal. So I look at my comics, like the wave I've done up till now have been kind of like retrospective in a way that it's like Lockjaw is a story about a man trying to find purpose.
Hmm.
Lucha Forever is a story of like a man trying to like support his family while being creative.
Hmm.
Americana is like fear of parenting. Like all of them have something that like I was working through. But if you just look at like the cover of the books, you would never know like that's what it was. You would find it through the story.
Right.
So I think I kind of got that from like Guillermo del Toro of like, I'm going to tell a like a story about meaning, but I'm gonna tell it through these lenses that I've learned to kind of like adapt from. Because when I went to school for film, that was always something I was interested in. I always wanted to tell like monster stories, but have it about more than just like the creature in front of you.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I hear you. So then that must mean your newest comic book, which I have here, Familiar Dungeons, is about friendship.
So that one is about me and my 7 siblings.
Oh, seven. Okay, there you go. What
Yeah.
about family?
So yeah. So I had a kind of combined character. So like I have one older sister, then it's me, and then I have 2 younger brothers and 3 younger sisters. So I just kind of started putting groupings together, like based on personality. Yeah. So like that one, it's a story about a group of siblings that get transported from a high school party to like a dungeon manual, like a D&D
Hmm.
story. And they have to play their way out. But the older brother, which is me in the story, is nervous of like if something happens to them, that's on me,
Oh, okay.
and learning to trust them to make their own mistakes and
Gotcha.
to grow as people. So the youngest character in there, her name is Vanessa. That's actually my little sister, Vanessa. Like she's the only one that I didn't change the name for because that character was written so specifically for her that I was like, I can't take that away.
Now,
Yeah.
do you let your family know, your siblings know, hey, I'm writing this story about us. I want you to check it out, or just like surprise,
No.
bam.
Yeah, pretty much. I pretty much wrote it and then sent it out to people to talk about it and then put it on the shop. And then they messaged me. They're like, "Oh, you didn't tell us like you did another one." I was like, "Oh, that's crazy." And then they're like, "Well, what's it about?" And then I'll tell them and they're like, "So this is about us?" I'm like, "Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, 100%." I was like, "No one looks worse in this story than I do." Like like breathe. Like you guys will be fine. And then they read it and they approved, so
Okay,
but it was a
cool.
lot of like yeah, because I write about like my dad and stuff in it too. Because with with my older sister, we share the same mom, but with
Okay.
my other siblings, we share the same dad. So I wrote in it like, "Oh, your dad's kind of a slut," and then I was like, "Yeah, I'm keeping that joke in there because it fits."
That's cool. That's really cool that you bring in your family experience into your comics and your storytelling. I really think that's really cool and makes it more personal for you.
Yeah.
Um, so what have been like some of the challenges or triumphs? I guess what some of the triumphs is selling off the comic book rights, but what are some of the challenges when you're running your indie comic book publishing company?
The biggest hurdle is finding the audience. So it's like I wrote this one. So I reached out to a lot of people that I knew that played Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
So that way they could like, hey, you'll probably like this. It's in the realm of stuff that you like. And then getting them to like share it or talk about it.
Hmm.
And then going to shows because a lot of what I do now is I sell pretty well through like the TikTok shop and on the website, like, but that people only go there because I have to now make all the content talking about it.
Oh, I
And
see. Okay.
between like my son, my other jobs, and then doing this, because I'm still doing weddings, it's a lot of work. And then finding the time to do the videos and seem excited. Because a lot of times I'm doing the videos at night. And when I'm doing them at night, I can see me in the camera going like, "Hey guys, I'm John Avina. Oh, Bermuda Con." I'm like, no, you can't yawn. Like, shake it off. Do the video, and then I'll have to do like 3 takes. But it's cool. Like, I got to partner with this guy. His brand is called Wham Stand, and they
Okay.
make like 3D printed stuff. So like, he did like these cool stands for conventions. That little neon
Nice.
light behind me,
Uh-huh.
it says Cinema Muerte, so it's one of our comics. He made an actual light box for me.
Very cool.
Uh, so it's nice because now when I'm doing like my videos and stuff, I have other stuff to talk about. I'm like,
Okay.
hey, like here's this like pin for Lockjaw and Pistoletto that this guy made, and here's what the comic's about. So it gives me a way in to talk
Gotcha.
about because the hardest part is like I'm on camera again, being like, hey guys, so what's new in Lucha Forever? And then talking. I hate talking about it to like my camera because I was like, there's no face looking back at me.
Just take a picture of someone and put it on your camera there and, pretend like you're talking to someone.
Yeah, I didn't like it's kind of a joke, but it's also a serious thing because there's like a note on my desk and it's like be as excited on camera as Zack Snyder is talking about Rebel Moon. Like even if you don't love it, sell it with your whole
Sell it
heart.
like you do, yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, so I guess it means that a lot of your not word of mouth, but you get a lot of feedback maybe from fan interaction. So
Yeah.
has the audience helped shape maybe the direction you're taking in some of your writing or the comic book series themselves just based on their input?
Yeah, they really helped tell me which book to do next,
Okay.
based on interaction. So when we published this book called Americana, I thought it wouldn't really move because it's such a personal story about like fear of parenting.
Hmm.
I was like, we'll see how it goes. But I knew I loved it. Like I knew that was a
Yeah.
book that I liked. And then right away, people that bought it at conventions would message me and be like, hey, like when's issue 2 coming out? Because I really enjoyed it. So I got enough of that where now that's like top of the docket is like issue 2. Lockjaw always sells when it comes out. Like I have a Lockjaw's going to meet the Headless Horseman in this new like short we're doing.
Nice.
So I was like, okay, I'm doing that one. I have another Lockjaw Van Helsing story because we did like a spinoff. And then we have the third issue of like the main Lockjaw all queued up for like the next 2 months.
Oh, very
So it's
cool.
like Lockjaw moves himself because they see him and they're like, oh, I kind of know who he is already.
Yeah.
We got it. And then for like the comic Cinema Muerte, I do a lot of horror conventions because
Oh,
they're
okay.
like they're pretty easy to get into because people like horror. At the last show I did on one day, I sold like 110 copies of like my comics.
Oh,
So it was a
wow.
really good show. Yeah,
Yeah.
just that Saturday show was really good. And then we closed strong that Sunday too. So I was like, okay. So they were asking me after that one for issue 3 of Cinema Muerte. So now I made the sign and we're
Hmm.
actually going to sell them at the shows because people were just buying the patches because they had like these like horror jackets that they made, but they
Yeah.
had like Frankenstein, the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wolfman. So they put my badge up there, and I was like,
Oh,
well,
nice.
that was a cool feeling. So we finished issue 3 should be out in the next like month because we're just lettering it now.
Hmm.
But then from there, it all kind of wraps up on issue 5. So that'll be the first trade paper that I print is going to
Oh,
be that book.
that's really cool. That's really
Yeah, so
cool.
now it's getting into trades and figuring out how that works. Oh, and we got into a comic book store, so that's cool too.
Congratulations. There you go.
Yeah,
There you go. That's really cool. That way people could just stumble across it and pick it up and be like, what is this? And be amazed. So yeah.
that's the hope. So
Yeah. Well, I guess that's more of the business side of things of the comic book industry itself. Have you found that to be challenging? I mean, how do you plan yourself when you go to a convention and like were you expecting to sell that many or have that issue do that well? Is that something that you plan for or walk us a little bit on that, I guess.
yeah, so I knew I would do okay because we did that show in November last year and we did pretty good. Like it was a
Mhm.
good show. And then for that show, I was like, okay, kind of know the same thing. Talk about Cinema Muerte. We have a comic called Starve Rock that's a horror comic, and Americana. Those are my big 3 for horror.
Yeah.
So I can just work my way down. And then Friday was okay. Like it was nothing to like really. I think maybe we sold 25 comics, so nothing crazy.
Hmm.
Then the next day, it was like from the moment the doors opened, people were just walking around. And I think because like some people were just there for Saturday, they were willing to spend money on something, even if they didn't really understand it. So we
Gotcha.
wrote this comic called Loteria, which is about like this Mexican card game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in that one, like it's basically like my version of Scream or I Know What You Did Last Summer. It's like a 90s horror movie,
Nice.
but the way the killer finds you is if your card gets pulled. So
Ah,
if
okay.
when they play it, if it gets pulled, they come after you. So I just kind of explained it to that like people, and they're like, "Yeah, I'll take that one too." I was like,
Okay.
"Okay." So
Okay.
and then it was really cool though because at that show, there's a comic book writer named Colin Bunn. He did like Godzilla versus Power Rangers
Okay.
and Deadpool kills yeah, the Marvel universe and stuff. But he wasn't there selling; he was just there.
Yeah.
And me and him had talked over email a bunch like in the past, but he didn't
Okay.
know I was going to be at the show. So we just happened to run into each other. Like I was at my table and he's like, I waited a while to come say hi to you. He's like, because every time I would circle around, you had a line. He's like, but he's like, it's cool that you know how to sell yourself. He's like, because I was going to come like mess around and like if you're like slow, he's like, but you were never slow. He's like, so
That's
that
cool.
was really cool. Yeah. So it was nice to get that kind of feedback from like a
Yeah.
comic pro. because that's probably the hardest part about this is like getting actual writers to care
Mm.
because they're the ones ultimately that if they read your book and they give you a shout out, more fans will come in
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they'll be like that gives them some kind of like legitimacy, right?
Yeah. I hear you.
So it's stuff like that. So like there's been a few people I've given it to that I've gotten like positive feedback from, which is nice. But every time I go to a convention, I'm torn between like going up to talk to these people or just selling it myself and being like, I got to do it. So I see 2E2's coming up, so that's going to be like my big test of like how do I do on my own
Hmm.
versus reaching out to some of these guys.
Okay. That's fair
Yeah.
enough. I mean, I think with the amount of books you have, I think that shouldn't be a problem. I mean, you have a
Yeah.
wide breadth of stories that you're able to tell people. So that should be really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. And there's a couple of people that already like kind of messaged like, "Hey, would it be cool if I like picked your brain for a little while?" And they're like, "Yeah, well, like these are my break times." So they're like, "Come grab like, well, I'll come grab you or text you during that
Oh, that's
time,
cool.
and we'll like we can talk." So my wife's gonna be at my table, and then my friend Chris, who's the Chris from Cinema Muerte, is gonna
Okay.
be there.
Nice.
So I can trust them to watch the table while I get to go do something and then come back.
And we've spoken to a lot of comic book writers and artists here on the show, and that's one thing that they always, I wouldn't say complain, but that they mention that as fans themselves of comic books, that they never get to leave their table because
Yeah.
they always have to be there selling or whatnot. And so that's really cool that you have someone you could trust there with your work while you get to go explore and speak with other people.
Yeah, and like it does pay off. So I know like if people are nervous about doing it, like if they got their own book, there's
Hmm.
an artist named Jim Terry. He's from Chicago. He's really nice. I just walked up to him once and I handed him a copy of Lockjaw and I just kind of like gave him a speech about what it's about. And I was like, it'd be really cool if you ever had time to like do a variant. And he's like, I'm kind of busy, but we'll see. I was like, all right. So like 2 months later, send him a message, reintroducing myself. And he was like, I remember. He's like, I like the book. I read it. He's like, it's good. And then I
Cool.
was like, do you have time? And we're actually going to have his variant now for C2E2. So he did one. So I
That's
was
cool.
like, yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Sometimes you
So
just got
there,
to take that leap. Yeah, that's really cool.
and, and it's like, I understand why people are nervous because people will come up to me with like their portfolio and I'll see them shaking. I was like, I'm not important at all. Like, I was like, I'm just a guy. Like, yeah, I'll see it and I'll tell you what I think and stuff. Like, that's cool. But I was like, they're starting, so they're nervous. I was like, okay, I get it. Yeah, because that was the exact same way. No one that starts cool. Like you're very nervous.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I mean, it's you're giving away a part of yourself to an extent, right? So it's a personal
Yeah.
thing that you're showing someone else, and it's always that fear of rejection, I would imagine, that plays into one's psyche. And it's like, I don't want to hear the bad stuff, but I need to find out if it's any good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the hard part. Cause like
Yeah.
if you sent someone something, I got to send something to like an editor that worked on American Vampire.
Okay.
So that was cool because I loved them. So I sent them Americana and then they sent me back feedback and I was like, okay, cool. Like they didn't hate it, they liked it, but the problem was in the structure of my pitch. So I was like,
Okay.
that's something I can actually work on.
Yeah.
But the problem is now I got to reach back out to him and be like, I fixed it. Can you recheck it? And I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like, I'll risk it and I'll just hang on to it.
See, you
Yeah.
even have that fear still. That's I
Oh
understand
yeah.
completely. I
Yeah.
understand completely. So, looking forward, what are the future aspirations for Avina Comics? Are there any like dream projects or collaborations you're eager to explore?
I have a pitch that I'm working on to give to that Jim Terry artist at
Okay.
C2E2. Basically, I wrote this kind of like true detective-ish horror story thing where it's a detective moves up from Chicago to like northern Illinois to like a small town.
Okay.
And there's a series of drownings that are happening. So it's gonna be a murder mystery with a supernatural twist.
Nice.
Uh, but I have such like a vision of it and what I want for it. And it was like an old screenplay that I wrote, but I want to do it as one collected graphic novel.
Okay.
And the publisher already said yes if I can get the artist.
Oh.
So
So now you're the one trembling a little bit with
yeah.
this.
So I have to get that ready to present and do all that. And then I think my big push for the end of this year into next year is going to be selling some of these books to other publishers,
Okay.
like getting it to them and kind of building out the brand and keeping the books that I know how to sell to for myself, and then seeing what I could do with the rest.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Now, I remember the last time we spoke, you mentioned that you were possibly doing some teaching on your Patreon channel.
Yeah.
So I guess my last question for you would be, is there any other advice that maybe you've gleaned from there, or anything advice that you would want to pass along to new artists or new writers who are maybe trying to make their mark in the industry?
Yeah. Um, Definitely take your time on the script, because now I'm at a point where people are submitting to me, even though I don't have any kind of submissions or anything. They'll just send me an email, but I tell them like I'll only read it if it's a completed comic, because I don't want to read your script and then give you notes on it, and then you'd be like, he stole my idea. Because a lot of what I get is
Mhm.
like Latin comic book people sending me their
Mhm.
stuff, and I was like, it's a real fine line between like similarities.
Yeah.
So there has been a few where they've given it to me and I've had to give back feedback like, hey, like it's been 2 issues of exposition. So like maybe before you print this, maybe you combine the two together, so that way it's like 1 issue, and then issue 2, you just ramp it up. I was like, that would be my advice. It goes well or it doesn't when I give them that kind of feedback.
Hmm.
I'm just like, I just know what I like as a reader. Like that's where this is
Right.
coming from. So I was like, just maybe work on that. But a lot of people will submit a pitch and they just have like, they didn't spend time on the art, like thinking about what the look would be. It
Okay.
was just, and like, I won't read stuff that they give me if it's like AI art as like the sample of it.
Right.
So, and I'll get that and I'll be like, hey, like, I understand what you're doing with it, but like, hire an artist just to draw the cover, if anything. Like, just show me that you're willing to put more into it,
Okay.
and then that shows me how much you care.
Ah,
So
gotcha. Okay.
yeah, so there's some stuff like that where it's just like, take your time. You don't have to rush. Just because you have that idea right now doesn't mean you're going to lose it tomorrow. Like, take your time, build it out, draft it like multiple times, and then when it's ready, like when you know you can't touch it anymore, make it. Because a lot of times it'll be like, you thought of this a couple of weeks ago, you wrote it, and then you just handed it off. I was like, take your time, pump the brakes, and then go forward. Yeah.
I get that. Yeah, I get that
Yeah.
completely, because I get rushes of ideas in my head, and like I want to get them down, but then like the next week I'm on to something else. So yeah,
Yeah. I'm
yeah.
I'm the same way too. Like me and my buddy were gonna start a Cinema Muerte podcast, me and my buddy Chris,
Okay.
where it was just like we just talk about like a movie of the week, catch up,
Oh, see,
because
that's
he lives
cool.
in California, I live here. And it was just gonna be like talk about a comic that we read and like a movie and just like shoot the shit about pop culture stuff.
Yeah.
We have started and stopped it like 9 times because I'm just like, the hardest part about podcasting is like keeping a schedule. The
Mm-hmm.
consistency is the only thing that really works.
Mm-hmm.
And my schedule's garbage. So like yeah, I was like, we'll revisit it in a few months and then maybe shoot a couple back to back just so we have some stuff and then see if it'll work. But like, I commend you guys for being able to do this because I know how hard it is. And
Thanks. Yeah.
it's hard.
It takes a commitment. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, John, I think that wraps up for this episode of Pop Cult X. Everyone out there, go to avinacomics.com. Check out Familiar Dungeons, check out Cinema Muerte, check out all the other offerings that John has there. They're really special. They really dive into a personal story from John. And it's just really fun to watch. Because there are some videos on there. It's really fun to read too. So,
Yeah.
so John, any parting thoughts on pop culture before we sign off for today?
I think we're in a really cool spot with like pop culture where it seems like more creatives that are getting behind the wheel actually care.
Yeah.
Like if you look like Ninja Turtles and all that stuff,
Oh
like
yeah.
it seems
Yeah.
like a lot of things are being made with heart right now. So I think it's a
Mhm.
good time if you're a creative out there who's thinking about getting into it. Right now is the time. Right now, I think we're in a really good spot with like indie creatives too, kind of fighting for their space
Mhm.
and being brought up by other indie people. So like if you're gonna do it, but just make sure you know what your goal is. Because if you're going thinking you're going to be like the next Dan Slott or something, like just settle for a spot that you're happy at and then fight for your spot.
Be for yourself. Yep. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, John, for taking some time to chat with us in this episode of PopCultX. We really appreciate it. And everyone out there, we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.